right. Hello, everyone. My name is Kaylah, and welcome to our LARP 101 panel. Thanks so much for the St. Louis Online Cosplay Con for having us. I'm really glad we were able to do this. I know the pandemic has been really stressful for everyone, so this is really great and exciting for us to be able to do. All right, so welcome to LARP 101, where we will be giving you an overview of what live action roleplay is, what it's not, go through some basics, and help you figure out if this hobby is for you. So let's get started. Okay. So my name is Kaylah. I'm down in the corner. Hello. I got into LARP in 2014 when I was in college and pretty quickly fell in love with the creativity and the storytelling that it allowed me to explore. My partner Sahil and I founded Lost and Found Studios, LLC, which is a theatrical gaming company that hosts LARPs last year. So that's me on the left, the picture in the middle, and on the right are two of my original characters that I play at Lost and Found Studios' current campaign LARP, which is called Solarian Adventures. In the middle is my Tiefling Sorcerer, and then on the right is my Barbarian Warrior. I have a really good time playing both of them, and if you come to Solarian Adventures, you will probably meet both of them. They're very different, but they're both really fun. And then I'd also like to introduce Sahil Vaid, who is the co-founder of Lost and Found Studios. During our panel time, we will both be available to answer questions about LARP after I go through this quick presentation, both in the YouTube comments and on Discord. So Sahil's been LARPing since 2016, and he's one of the game managers for Solarian Adventures LARP, where he is known as the HR ghost, which is why there's a picture of a ghost with a clipboard. He doesn't usually play a regular player character and spends most of his time making sure that the game runs smoothly and safely and addresses any player issues that might come up during gameplay or in between events. So he is super helpful and important and awesome, and that's us. So let's talk about LARPing. So general objectives for this presentation / panel. First, we're going to go through what LARP is and what LARPing is. Then we're going to give you a quick vocabulary lesson and go through some common LARP terms so you're more comfortable with that sort of stuff. We will be talking about types of LARP, how to LARP, some common problems that come up during LARP, and then the benefits of LARPing. And then after that, we give you your quick 101 introductory course on LARPing. We will have our Q&A with our panel, which is Sahil and I, on YouTube and on Discord. All right, so let's get started. So what is LARP? LARP stands for live action roleplay, and most people have no idea what I'm talking about when they find out that I'm a LARPer and that I LARP. There are sometimes some, LARPing comes up sometimes in popular media, but is it totally 100% accurate? Usually not. Usually it's full of stereotypes and kind of makes fun of people or whatnot. Usually the example that I give when people are like, LARPing, what's that? I'm like, oh, have you seen the movie Role Models? And sometimes people are like, yeah, and other people are like, no, and then I have to explain it all over again. So the movie Role Models has a pretty basic example of stereotypical LARPing. There have been LARPing settings / plot lines in some other shows, like Supernatural is a pretty good one. What We Do in the Shadows is another show that referenced LARPing, but that one was pretty heavy stereotypes. And there's actually a YouTube series called LARPS, which is actually a fairly accurate representation of what LARPing is and the kinds of dynamics that people have both as players and as characters within a LARP setting. So that one's actually pretty good. So again, like I said, LARP stands for live action roleplay. Essentially, LARPs are interactive games during which players physically act as their characters with the help of costumes and props. So you can think of it as a live action version of Dungeons and Dragons or another tabletop, especially the fantasy LARPs, right? Because you're dressing up as your character, as your elf or your dwarf or, whatever. And you're going out and you're basically playing D&D, except instead of using dice to do things, you just go out and do them. If you engage in combat, you engage in combat with fake weapons or with another means, and you solve puzzles and things like that. If you don't play tabletops or are into D&D, then you can also think of it as a video game meets an escape room. So just like a video game, there's usually a plot line, there are different characters. Some characters are part of the game, some characters you're making the decisions for, meets an escape room where you're solving puzzles or doing scavenger hunts or completing quests, like you're physically there doing the thing. So that's basically how LARP works on a very basic level. So they're live action, you pick a role, you play that role, and that's LARP. So a quick vocab lesson. So when you go to LARP, there are different kinds of scenarios that you're going to be in, and there's kind of a lot of vocab that someone going in might be overwhelmed by, so I'm just going to break it down for you, hopefully help you out a little. So the first thing you need to know is the difference between in play and out of play. So in play are the things that happen in the game world. So in play, you are your character. I play, a tiefling who can do magic. And that's within the game world, right? When things happen in the game world, we're fighting, demons or bandits or whatever. That's all within the game world. So that's in-game or in play. Out of play, I'm myself. I'm not a tiefling, right? I'm just a person dressed up as one, running around completing side quests and things like that. So in the real world, I'm still in the US. In the real world, I drive a car and I have a day job and all those things. So all of those things are out of play. Those are the real things. So it's really important to make sure that you're keeping in play things in play and out of play things out of play, because once those things start to cross over, that's when we can see some kinds of problems, and we'll get into those more later. So other common things you might hear people talk about their PCs, right? So PC is a player character. So a character that a player creates so that they can play as them. So my player character is Ella the Tiefling. A non-player character, an NPC, is a character who is scripted by a game manager. They're a part of the game world. They don't get to make decisions for themselves, really. They are given tasks. They give out quests. They have to follow a particular kind of, guidance given by the game organizers. So they don't really get to play the game. They're just these scripted characters that you interact with, just like you interact with any other aspect of the in-game world. So PC, player character, NPC, non-player character. Those are also really common terms in video games. Kit. So when you hear someone talk about their LARP kit, they're talking about their character's costume. So that's all that means. It includes, your clothing, your shoes, your accessories, personal items. All of that is your character's kit. People have different kits for different characters. You can use kit pieces. If you have a particular set of armor that you use for one character, it doesn't mean you can't use it for another character. It's just a short term to be like, oh yeah, Ella's kit is these items. Bleed is a very interesting topic, term, concept. So bleed is when feelings from game affect you out of play, or vice versa, when things that happen out of play affect you in play. So that's when the in play versus out of play scenario really matters a whole lot. So an example of bleed would be that if Sahil and I are playing our characters, And Sahil's character does something really mean to me. Maybe he knocks me out and takes all my stuff. That's really mean. At the end of the game, if I'm actually mad at Sahil, in real life, I'm experiencing bleed, right? Because the anger that my character felt, I'm now feeling in real life, and it's affecting me in the real world. Bleed is not inherently bad. When it becomes bad is when I then get really mad at Sahil out of game, and I take it out on him, and I start an argument and tell him what a terrible person he is for doing that to me, when it was really his character, and maybe he plays a mean character, but he's a really nice person. So at that point, we're experiencing bleed. And vice versa, if Sahil and I get into an argument as, friends or partners or whatever before a game, and then I decide, well, I'm really mad at Sahil, so I'm going to make my character be really mean to his character today, even though my character doesn't have an in-play reason for doing that, then that's a bleed issue, right? So bleed is kind of a confusing concept. Again, it's not inherently good or bad, because some people really enjoy feeling powerful emotions through LARPing, and it's actually a really cool experience to feel your character's feelings, right? But sometimes it can cause issues. Metagaming is also another thing that can cause issues. Metagaming is using information you receive out of play in play. So if Sahil and I are talking as friends, and I tell him, oh yeah, Ella's gonna rob so-and-so this weekend at our game, and then Sahil goes and tells the player who plays so-and-so that my character plans to rob them, then that might cause problems, because that player might have their character rob me first or get revenge for something that didn't actually happen in play. So metagaming is a form of cheating. Or, for example, if I had another friend come over and I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to be using this item, this key is going to be really important for the plot next weekend, and they show up and their character's like, I think we should look for a key, they would have had no way of knowing that, because that's something that happened out of play that they're then using to get ahead in play. So that's metagaming. And then the last term we're going to go over is immersion. So immersion is how easy it is for players to accept that they are in the game world. So different LARPs have different levels of immersion. Low-level immersion might mean that you show up in your everyday clothes, and you're handed a weapon that doesn't really look very realistic, and you go in and you play like that. Maybe there's not a lot of encouragement to stay in your role. Maybe there isn't a whole lot of plot. That would be a low level of immersion game. Whereas a high level of immersion game would have very realistic props, would have really good costuming, would have like high production value. Those would all be like a high immersion situation. It's how easy it is for you to suspend disbelief. How easy is it for you to accept that you're in the game world? That's immersion. So at Solarian Adventures, we aim for like a medium level of immersion. So our costumes are really good, but if you show up in like modern hiking boots, we're not going to get mad at you and kick you out. So it's medium level immersion. So that's immersion. Hopefully I didn't go through those too quick. If you have a question about one of them, go ahead and leave a comment on the YouTube video or ask us on Discord. So let's keep going. So types of LARP. So LARP is surprisingly versatile. A lot of people automatically think of kind of a medieval fantasy style for LARPing, and there are a lot of medieval fantasy LARPs. But if you're not into medieval fantasy, that doesn't mean that there aren't LARPs for you. So there are different genres. So you might have a fantasy LARP. There might be a sci-fi LARP. Outbound Hope was a LARP that was supposed to take place later this year. I don't know if they've canceled it or not. But they are a like space exploration LARP. There's also Victorian LARPs, like Armistice Arcane is a Victorian style LARP, so it's all Victorian era. There are post-apocalyptic LARPs, dystopia LARPs. This picture is actually from my friend Westbrook, who went to a 1930s style LARP based on the play Hamlet. So there's lots of different genres of LARP. There's also different styles. So there are one-shot LARPs. A one-shot LARP means you create a character, you go to one event, you play that character at that one event, or maybe it's 2 events or 3 events, and then it's done. So it's a kind of a short-term LARP. You go, there's a storyline with a very obvious beginning, middle, and end, and then once it's over, it's over. So that would be one shot. Whereas a campaign LARP, the story is continuous over time. So the Solarian Adventures LARP that we run is a campaign LARP. So things that happened last year affect the plot this year. Things happened the year before last year affects still now what the players are going, or what the characters are going through. So that would be a campaign LARP where there's no clear ending, at least not right now. It's a long-term LARP. There's also blockbuster LARPs, excuse me. Blockbuster LARPs are LARPs with very high production value. They're usually a little pricier. For example, Armistice Arcane is a Victorian LARP where they rent out an entire hotel in New Orleans, right? And so you play throughout the entire hotel. You live there, you're fed, all of those things. So that would be a blockbuster style LARP. A parlor LARP is a LARP that usually takes place within like 1 or 2 rooms. It's usually politically focused. There's not necessarily combat. So the game occurs like within a smaller space and usually involves like political intrigue or mystery or something like that. So lots of different types, different genres. There's also different levels of structure. Some LARPs have a 300-page rulebook. Other LARPs have a 10-page rulebook. I think our rulebook is somewhere around 80 pages. So there's different level of structure. Some LARPs are very strict. There's a rule for every single thing that you can and can't do. Whereas other LARPs are more free form, where if you think it, you can do it. So that's also something to take into account. And again, there's different levels of immersion. Low immersion, there's not really a lot of props and costuming. High level of immersion, there's a lot of that stuff. Whereas the medium level of immersion, like our LARP, again, when we have camp out events, you can use a modern tent, that's fine. We have a really great playing field, which takes place at a replica fort with these great stone walls and forest trails. So that part of it is, a higher level of immersion. But a lot of times we write quest cards that are bright green because they're easier to see. So, that's not necessarily the most immersive thing, but it just makes it easier. And they're all laminated so we can reuse them. So stuff like that. It's just different ways of, how hard do you need to pretend? So those are your, some different types of LARP, things to consider when you're, trying to decide what kind of LARP you want to go to. So hopefully at this point, you're like, wow, that sounds really cool. Let's do it. I'm ready. So you want to LARP? Now what? So I'm going to walk you through easiest way to get into LARPing. First, you're going to find a LARP, then you're going to read the rules, then create a character, and then do the thing. And I'm sure some of you are wondering, the picture was drawn by one of our players on here. It's just a cartoon drawing of a bunch of characters that you would find at our LARP. We're all ridiculous. So this is them playing Monopoly. As you can see, everyone has quite big personalities. All right, so step 1, find a LARP. Again, there are so many different kinds of LARPs, and it might take you a couple tries to find one that really fits your personality, your needs, your desires, whatever. So easiest way, take time to research LARPs in your area. You can Google them. LARPing.org has a LARP finder. It's not the most up to date, but it could give you a place to start. A lot of LARPs have Facebook groups. Or you can come to conventions like these and meet LARPers here. So if you want to join our LARP, again, we're called Solarian Adventures. We're on Facebook, Discord, we have a website, all that good stuff. Another great thing to do is meet and talk to some of the players before you go. So most LARPers are pretty friendly. It's a social hobby. A lot of us are kind of awkward, as many, nerds and geeky types are. But I encourage you to talk to some people before you go. Maybe you can plan a shared backstory, and that might make you more comfortable. Also, thing that seems to be a secret, but I'm kind of surprised about, is that people who organize LARP games are usually more than happy to answer questions. I love it when people ask me questions about LARPing. I love talking about it. So they're happy if you're not sure about something. They're happy to answer questions about whatever it is you are unsure about, are uncomfortable with, anything you want to know beforehand. They're more than happy to tell you. Also, a really important note, you might like things that you don't expect to like. So I encourage you to try new things. A very common example of this is, especially for a lot of women, including me, you go to LARP and you're like, oh, I don't think I want to get into combat. Like, hitting people with fake weapons, like, that just seems violent. I don't want to get involved in it. That seems scary, and I don't want to get hurt and whatever. And then you go, and you inevitably get into combat. And after it's over, you're like, wow, I just fought a zombie. That was amazing. I kicked their butt. That was great. Let's do it again. And then all of a sudden, you're like, yeah, I love combat. It happens a lot. So don't be afraid to try new things. So once you've decided, hey, this LARP seems cool, step 2, read the rules. This will help you get an idea of how gameplay works, since it can be very different from game to game. It'll also help you create a character and learn what to expect at a normal LARP event. It's important to read over and skim the rules, but you will not be expected to be an expert at your first game or your second game or your third game. It is totally fine to ask questions. I know when I started LARPing, I forgot rules all the time, or I forgot what a spell did, and I would ask someone, hey, what's that? What am I supposed to do? And they're just like, oh yeah, just do this thing. That means this. This means this. And I'm like, okay, cool. LARPers are generally pretty helpful. And mostly, reading the rules is important so you can pay close attention to safety information. So at our LARP, if you see someone wearing an orange headband, it means that you cannot engage that person in combat. So that's really important to know. Or if you go through the forest trails and you come across a row of yellow stakes, that means you went too far, turn around and come back, you've reached the edge of the gameplay area. So those kinds of things are really important, which is why it's important to read the rules. So once you've done that, it is time to build a character, which I'm sure, since this is a cosplay con, you are all, this is the part that's the most exciting. I absolutely love creating characters. So first you're going to want to consider the kind of character that you are going to have fun playing. Do you want to be a magic user? Do you want to be a scholar? Do you want to be someone who fights people? Do you want to be a mercenary? Do you want to be, whatever? What kind of character? I want to play an elf. I want to play a dwarf. I want to play an orc. Whatever that is. I want to play someone who's really nice. I want to play someone who is smart or whatever. Consider what kind of character you want to play. And once you start brainstorming, the part that a lot of people forget to do, but I'm going to very much encourage you to do, is consider the kind of character other people want to play with. Because sure, it sounds cool to be this like dark, mysterious, like brooding character who's kind of a loner. Maybe they have a heart of gold, whatever it is. But if you play this mysterious, dark, brooding character who sits in the corner and doesn't talk to anyone, no one's going to talk to you. I hate to be that person, but, you want to know, if you want to come and be social and get involved, it's going to be harder for you to be involved if your character is actively trying to stay uninvolved. And also, if you want to play an antagonistic character, it's cool to play the villain, but you have to understand that if you are going around and insulting people and taking their stuff and starting fights, people might respond negatively to that, and that means people might be less likely to want to interact with you, or might have to get revenge on your character, or things like that. So yes, consider what kind of character you want to play. Also consider the kind of character other people want to play with. Then what you're going to do is you're going to design that character based on those LARP rules. So in LARP, your character is going to have different skills, different abilities. You're going to probably have to pick a class, something like that. And that's why, another reason why the rule book is going to be important. Usually there's a character sheet you fill out using the rule book. It'll tell you. And again, if you need help, talk to a current player, talk to a game organizer. And then once you have your character concept down, your skills and all that, you are going to design a kit, which is really fun. So designing a LARP kit, there are places you can buy kit pieces. So if you go to the Renaissance Festival, there are online LARP companies who sell LARP costume pieces and weapons and things like that, like Kalamazeel and Medieval Collectibles. You can also sometimes find stuff on Amazon and Wish. You don't have to have a lot of money to LARP. It is totally possible to LARP on a budget. If you make your own costume, you can save money. If you thrift things from places like Goodwill or Savers, those are also really great places. I thrift most of my costume pieces because I'm really bad at sewing. So the only things I've really spent money on are like armor pieces and weapons. And also, it's really, really, really important to remember that LARP kits need to be practical and weatherproof. So that's super, super, super important. So a couple of kit design tips. LARP kits are different than cosplay. For cosplay, there's a lot of attention to detail. There's a lot of, last minute putting together sometimes. There are armor pieces that are made of different kinds of materials than what you're going to want to use for LARP. So for example, comfortable, supportive shoes are absolutely essential for LARPing. So I wear modern style hiking boots for part of my LARP kit because you don't want to, wear heels and then get stuck in the mud if you are playing in an outdoor venue. Not a good idea. Also, you're going to want to use durable fabrics and get armor pieces that are made out of the correct materials. If you wear foam armor or Warbler armor to a outdoor LARP event, it might get ruined by rain. It's not going to stand up to combat if you are playing a game where that's a big part of the game. So you're going to want to make sure you're using leather or at least pleather, metal, things like that. So that's going to be really important. Also, consider your immersion level and the playing field. Is it an indoor venue? Is it an outdoor venue? How close to historically accurate does it need to be, depending on time period and things like that? And also character accessories and personal items. They're really fun and they can really make or break your kit. So this is a picture of one of our players who plays a character named Siberia, who is kind of a wild elf type character, and so she has bone talismans and jewelry and things like that to really tell a story about who her character is, what she does, and things like that. All right, so you have your character, you've read the rules, you are ready. So last step, go to your first LARP event. It can be really scary and overwhelming and stressful, but everyone has been there. Everyone's been a new LARPer. And honestly, you just kind of have to jump in. So the picture on the left is me at like my third-ish LARP event. Like I'm wearing sweatpants and like moccasins from Goodwill. And I did my best to make some, pleather armor. I think it's actually vinyl, so that was me as like a little baby LARPer in college. And then the middle picture is my very first event that I played Ella, and then my tiefling. And then on the right, you can see what Ella looks like today. So these kits, you kind of slowly build them over time. You get a feel for who the character is. You figure out what style of LARP it is, things that you need, things that you don't need. So for example, at my first Ella event, I had made horns out of model magic and like glued them to a plastic headband, and they broke like my second event. So now I wear plastic horns because they're a little more durable. So you learn over time, and everyone's been a new LARPer. That's why LARPers are usually so helpful. So really, last step, just go for it. All right. So now that I've touted, what LARP is, kind of gotten a feel for it, I am going to come up with come out and talk about a couple of common problems that we see at LARPs. So the first main problem is going to be bleed. People getting their feelings hurt in game and then taking it out of game, or vice versa. It can be really stressful and hard, and sometimes your character has a really bad day. I know there was one day when my character had a really, really tough day. All these bad things happened to her, and I went home, and I was like really devastated out of play. But I didn't take that out on anybody else. I processed them, I talked to people about it, and then I felt a lot better, and it actually ended up being one of my favorite games, where it was this game where I was just so angry and frustrated and sad, like the whole game. So bleed can be a problem when you don't deal with your feelings healthily and communicate with others about your feelings. Metagaming can also be a problem. Again, that's when you take information that you got out of play and use it in play, spreading secrets around about characters that you learned from the player as opposed from the character. When you don't have any in-play knowledge of that secret, that can really hurt someone's feelings and ruin someone's game and make the game less fun. So metagaming is a problem. Communication and consent is really, really, really important. You would not believe, well, you might believe, how bad some people are at communicating. So it's really important to communicate with other players about the things that happen in game and get consent before you do something that might upset someone in game. So my tiefling is kind of an antagonistic character. If my character is really upset with somebody else's character, I might go up to that player before the game starts and be like, hey, Ella's really mad at you. And if she sees you, we might get into an argument and I might yell at you. Is that okay? And some people have a really hard time talking about that stuff before it happens. Because some people have really bad reactions to being yelled at, and I don't want to yell at those people. So if that player would be like, oh, please don't yell at me, that's going to make me freeze up, I'm probably going to cry and make me really upset. I'm going to be like, okay, new plan. When my character sees you, she's going to ignore you very pointedly for as long as possible. And then that player might be like, yeah, that's fine. I can handle that. I can be ignored, and that's okay. So communication and consent can really make or break games and character and player relationships. And then lastly, trying to win the game. A lot of LARPs are cooperative. I'm not saying that every character has to be besties with every other character. There's going to be, player antagonists. There are going to be NPC antagonists. But trying to hoard resources, not always making things about your character and not about other characters, that can really have a negative impact on player experiences. So that is also another common problem with LARPs. But there are also lots of benefits to LARPing. So one cool benefit of LARPing is that roleplay has shown to offer therapeutic benefits for people with autism spectrum disorder, social anxiety, ADHD, and other mental conditions. So I know for me, who has generalized anxiety, LARPing really helps me kind of experience new situations, engage with uncomfortable emotions within this very structured, safe confines of the game, where I don't have to deal with the real world consequences of making snap decisions or being angry at people and things like that. And that has actually really helped me a lot in my own life. LARPing is also great for making and sustaining friendships and meeting people who have similar interests to you. It's a great creative outlet for storytelling, for acting, for costume and prop making. Those are all great ways to be creative. There are so many ways to be creative in LARP. And it's really a fun outlet. So the last thing is just, it's really fun. Right? So going back to the days where you played pretend as a kid, this is basically just more structured pretend, right? It's LARP, it's imaginary. You come in, you get to do what you want, be creative, have fun, meet people. So that's why it's one of my favorite hobbies. It's extremely versatile, and I've had such a great time with it. So that was the quick and dirty LARP 101. Hopefully you all learned something. It was clear. you have a better feel for the basics of LARPing, and hopefully you also want to try LARPing now. If you're interested in coming to our LARP, Solarian Adventures, you can get more information about that at Lost and Found Studios LLC.com. We have a Facebook group. It's on facebook.com/group/Solarian Adventures LARP. We also have an Instagram page, which is just Solarian Adventures. And now we will start the Q&A portion of the panel. So go ahead and type up the questions you have either in the YouTube comments or on the Discord or on the Facebook page. And Sahil and I will do our very best to answer all of your questions in the last, 25-ish minutes that we have for the panel. So thank you so much for coming. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you're excited about LARP. And we're looking forward to hearing from you. So thanks again to St. Louis Online Cosplay Convention for having us. And I hope you all enjoyed. Thanks so much.